You're in a conference room, 15 people around the table, the kind of meeting where nothing gets decided but everyone pretends it matters. Your boss throws out a question. What do you all think about the Martinez proposal? Immediately, Greg jumps in. I think we should absolutely move forward. The ROI projections are solid, the timeline works with our Q3 goals, and frankly, if we don't do this, our competitors will. Sarah chimes in next. I agree with Greg, but I think we need to consider the resource allocation issues. We're already stretched thin on the Anderson account. Then Mike, then Jennifer, then Kevin. Everyone's got an opinion. Everyone's talking. Everyone's trying to sound smart, strategic, valuable. And you're sitting there, silent, watching, learning. You notice Greg's projections are based on outdated market data. You see Sarah's actually protecting her department's budget, not genuinely concerned about resources. You realize Mike hasn't even read the proposal. He's just echoing whatever Greg said. You observe your boss's micro expressions. She's already made up her mind, but wants to see who aligns with her thinking. 20 minutes of verbal diarrhea later, your boss looks at you. You've been quiet. What's your take? And here's where it gets interesting. Because now you're not just another voice in the chorus. You're the person who actually listened, who actually thought, was about to say something that matters because you didn't waste everyone's time proving you could speak. I think we're missing the real question, you say. It's not whether Martinez's proposal has merit. It's whether we can execute it without compromising our existing commitments. Greg's ROI assumes market conditions that changed 2 weeks ago when Apex announced their merger. Sarah's resource concerns are valid, but the real bottleneck isn't personnel. It's the approval process that will delay everything by 6-8 weeks, regardless of how many people we throw at it. The room goes quiet. Your boss leans forward. Go on. That's power, not the power that comes from talking the most, the power that comes from knowing when to shut the hell up and let everyone else expose themselves while you're gathering ammunition. Welcome to Machiavelli's most underrated weapon, strategic silence. The cost of running your mouth. Let me tell you something Machiavelli understood that your LinkedIn influencers don't. Every word you speak is a liability. Not sometimes, not occasionally, every single word. Men judge more by the eyes than by the hands, Machiavelli wrote. Everyone can see, but few can feel. Translation, people are watching your performance, not experiencing your actual capabilities. And the more you perform, the more you talk, explain, justify, clarify, the more you're giving them material to judge you on, material they'll use against you. Think about it. Every time you speak, you're creating 3 specific vulnerabilities. First, you're locking yourself into positions. Remember Derek, guy I knew who ran a startup, every investor meeting, every board meeting, hell, every coffee chat. He'd announce his strategy. We're pivoting to B2B. We're going up market. We're focusing on enterprise clients. We're launching in Asia next quarter. 3 months later, the market shifted. The B2B play wasn't working. Asia was a disaster. The enterprise clients wanted features Derek's team couldn't build. But Derek had painted himself into a corner. Everyone knew what he'd promised. Every pivot looked like failure. Every course correction looked like incompetence. Not because he made bad decisions, because he announced them before they were decisions. They were just ideas he should have kept quiet about. Compare that to Monica. Same industry, same pressure to communicate her vision to investors, but Monica played it different. She talked about exploring multiple revenue models and validating different market segments and maintaining strategic flexibility as we gather data. Vague? Absolutely. Frustrating to investors wanting specifics? You bet. But when the market shifted, Monica simply adjusted. No explanations necessary, no admitting failure, no loss of credibility, because she never committed to positions she might need to abandon. That's the first cost of unnecessary speech. Premature commitment. Second, you're exposing how you think. This one's subtle, but it's lethal. The more you explain your reasoning, the more you reveal your mental models, your assumptions, your blind spots. And smart people, your competitors, your colleagues, your adversaries, they're taking notes. I watched this play out in a legal negotiation. One attorney couldn't stop talking. Every point he made, he'd explain the reasoning. We're asking for X because we believe Y, and our experience shows Z. And if you look at the precedent, In Johnson v. Smith, the opposing attorney barely said a word, just listened, asked a few clarifying questions, took notes. By the end of day one, the quiet attorney knew exactly how her opponent thought. She knew which arguments he valued, which concerns he prioritized, which pressure points would move him. By day three, she was predicting his moves before he made them. The talkative attorney lost that negotiation before it even started, not because he was dumb, because he couldn't shut up. Machiavelli said the first method for estimating the intelligence of a ruler is to look at the men he has around him. Modern version, the first method for estimating someone's strategic capacity is listening to how much they unnecessarily reveal. Third, you're becoming ordinary. Here's the brutal truth. Mystique requires mystery. Authority requires distance. Power requires some level of the unknown. The person who explains everything, justifies every decision, shares every thought, they become common, familiar, predictable, human in all the ways that undermine authority. Think about the leaders you actually respect, not the ones you're supposed to respect, the ones you genuinely do. How much do you actually know about their internal decision-making process? How often do they explain themselves? Probably not much, probably rarely. Now think about that manager who's always explaining, let me tell you why I made this decision. Here's my thinking. I went back and forth on this. I considered A and B and C. I consulted with these people. I read this article. I had these concerns. Exhausting, right? And worse, it makes them seem uncertain, vulnerable, like they need your approval. They've explained away their authority. The three weapons, types of strategic silence. All right, let's get tactical. Machiavelli understood that silence isn't just one thing. It's a toolkit with different weapons for different situations. Master all three and you've got a serious advantage. First weapon, intelligence gathering silence. The wise man does at once what the fool does finally, Machiavelli wrote. The fool speaks first and learns nothing. The wise person shuts up and learns everything. Let me tell you about Rachel, sales director at a software company. Her team was hemorrhaging deals in the final stages. Prospects would get to the contract phase and then ghost. Her sales reps were frustrated. Management was concerned. Rachel could have done what most managers do, talk. Here's what I think the problem is. Here's my theory. Let me tell you what I've observed. I believe we should try X, Y, and Z. Instead, she called a team meeting and opened with one sentence. We're losing deals at contract stage. Why? Then she shut up. Uncomfortable silence, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 15. Finally, Tyler, one of the junior reps, speaks up. Honestly, I think our legal team is killing deals. The contract they send is 47 pages of worst-case scenario lawyerese that scares the shit out of prospects. Another rep jumps in, yeah, and our pricing structure is so complicated that by the time prospects get to the contract, they realize they're getting less than they thought for more than they expected. Another, also, I hate to say it, but Angela in contracts takes like 2 weeks to turn around any modifications, so prospects lose momentum. 20 minutes later, Rachel had a complete map of the problem, not her theory, the actual reality as experienced by the people closest to it. She didn't need to figure it out herself. She just needed to shut up and let her team tell her. That's intelligence gathering silence. You create a vacuum and let others fill it with information you couldn't get through direct questioning. Works in negotiations too. Make an offer and then nothing. Don't justify it. Don't explain it. Don't fill the silence. Let them sit with it. Let them negotiate against themselves, trying to fill that uncomfortable void. Well, we were thinking 200K, but we could probably do 185K if we didn't even respond and they just dropped their price by 15K. Second weapon, authority building silence. Now this one's interesting because it works on pure psychology. Machiavelli said, a prince must imitate the fox and the lion. The lion cannot protect himself from traps and the fox cannot defend himself from wolves. Part of the fox's cunning, knowing that scarcity creates value and nothing's more scarce than silence in a world of constant noise. I knew a creative director named Vincent, design agency, climb meetings every week where everyone's pitching ideas, showing concepts, explaining their thinking. Vincent's approach, He'd sit through the entire meeting, quiet, occasionally nodding, taking notes. While his team presented their work, he'd just watch the client's reactions. Then usually toward the end, he'd speak. Once, maybe twice, short, precise observations. The client responded to the blue palette, use that. Or, your third concept, that's the one, develop that direction. His team started calling them Vincent pronouncements. Not because he was smarter than everyone else, but because his restraint made his words feel more valuable. When Vincent spoke, people listened. Not because of what he said, but because he said so little that it had to matter. That's authority building silence. You're not withholding because you have nothing to say. You're withholding because making people wait for your input makes that input more valuable. This explains why powerful people in any domain speak less than those beneath them. The nervous junior employee overtalks. The CEO makes brief statements. The insecure person explains at length. The secure person states without justification. Watch it play out in your own life. The friend who always has an opinion on everything, their opinions start meaning less over time. The friend who rarely weighs in but occasionally drops some insight, you actually listen when they speak. Same phenomenon, different context, same power dynamic. Third weapon, ambiguity, preserving silence. This is the advanced level. This is where silence becomes genuinely strategic rather than just tactically useful. Machiavelli understood that sometimes your greatest asset is keeping people guessing. Not lying, not deceiving, just not clarifying things that benefit you more by remaining unclear. Story: I consulted with a CEO facing a hostile board situation. 3 board members wanted him out, 3 supported him, 2 were undecided. Classic corporate politics. Traditional advice: communicate clearly, tell everyone your plan, bring them on board with your vision. My advice: say as little as possible. Let them project their own preferred outcomes onto your ambiguous statements. So in the next board meeting, when pressed about his strategy, he said, we're going to focus on stakeholder value and sustainable growth while remaining responsive to market opportunities. What does that mean, Nefik? Everything, whatever you want it to mean. The board members who wanted aggressive expansion heard, we're going after growth. The ones who wanted financial discipline heard, we're being sustainable and responsible. The undecided ones heard, he's thoughtfully balancing different priorities. 6 months later, the company hit its numbers through a strategy none of them predicted, and the CEO kept his job because nobody could say he failed to deliver what he promised, because he never actually promised anything specific enough to fail at. That's ambiguity, preserving silence. You maintain multiple interpretations simultaneously. Everyone hears what they want to hear. You keep your options open. You preserve deniability. Politicians master this. I'm committed to both economic growth and environmental protection. How? They don't say. They let different constituencies imagine different compromises. Effective negotiators use it. We're looking for a fair agreement that recognizes the value both parties bring. What's fair? What's valuable? Undefined. Deliberately, leaders employ it. We're going to make bold moves while managing risk appropriately. Bold how, risk how, that's for you to decide after seeing how things develop. The psychology why silence breaks people. Now let's talk about why this works at a psychological level, because understanding the mechanism is how you weaponize the technique. Humans are deeply, profoundly uncomfortable with informational voids. We're pattern-seeking machines that evolved in environments where knowing what's happening around us was the difference between eating and being eaten. So when we encounter silence, when someone won't fill in the blanks, won't explain themselves, won't respond to our provocations, our brains go into overdrive trying to fill that void. And we almost always fill it with projections that reveal more about us than about the silent person. Let me show you how this plays out in real life. Michael's job interview. Michael's interviewing for a senior position. The interviewer asks, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Most people launch into a detailed explanation, career trajectory, aspirations, plans. They're trying to show ambition, vision, forward thinking. Michael just says, building something valuable. Silence. 5 seconds, 10 seconds, the interviewer is uncomfortable. She expected more. Michael doesn't fill it. Finally, she speaks. When you say valuable, do you mean in terms of revenue, market impact, team development? Yes, Michael says. Nothing else. More silence. She fills it again. So you're comfortable with ambiguity and multiple possible paths to success? I think the best opportunities often require staying flexible, Michael responds. Here's what happened. Through strategic silence and minimal responses, Michael made the interviewer do the work of imagining his ideal qualities. She projected ambition, flexibility, strategic thinking, all because he didn't hand her a script to judge. He made her create the narrative she wanted to hear. He got the job. A boardroom power play. Rachel's in a board meeting. Numbers aren't great. Board member attacks. These results are unacceptable. What's your plan to fix this? The instinct? Defend, explain, justify. Well, we faced unexpected market headwinds, and our competitor launched earlier than anticipated, and we had some operational challenges. Rachel does something different. She pauses, looks directly at the board member, 5 seconds of eye contact and silence. Then, what specific metrics are you most concerned about? She's not defensive, she's not explaining, she's redirecting through strategic silence followed by a precise question that forces him to clarify his actual position. The board member suddenly on the spot. Well, the revenue numbers, obviously. And user retention. Rachel, noted. Then she waits. The silence creates pressure. Other board members jump in to fill it. Suddenly, they're debating among themselves what metrics matter most. Rachel's no longer under attack. She's the calm presence while they argue about priorities. When they finally turn back to her, she simply says, "Give me 30 days on retention improvement. If we don't see movement, we'll revisit resource allocation." She commits to nothing beyond a time frame. She acknowledges one concern, but only generally. She maintains control through minimal engagement. The negotiation reversal. Chris is negotiating his salary. The recruiter throws out a number. We're thinking 110K. Every instinct screams to respond, to accept, to counter, to explain your worth, to justify why you should get more. Chris doesn't speak, just looks at the recruiter, nods slightly, waits. The recruiter, uncomfortable with the silence, base salary, of course, plus bonus potential of 20% based on performance. Still silence from Chris, slight frown now, still waiting. And we have excellent benefits, full health coverage, 401k match, unlimited PTO. Chris is still silent. The recruiter is now negotiating with herself. Each silence is another concession, another sweetener, another attempt to fill the void. Finally, Chris speaks. When do you need a decision? Not yes, not no, not a counter, just a practical question that implies he's considering multiple options. The recruiter, now slightly desperate. Well, we're motivated to move quickly on this if there's something about the package that's not working for you. I appreciate the offer. I'll need to think about it. Chris leaves. 2 days later, they call back with 125K plus a signing bonus because his silence made them assume he had better offers, which he might have or might not have. They'll never know because he didn't fill the silence with information that would have weakened his position. Here's where this gets controversial, because modern culture has convinced you that silence is suspicious, that transparency is virtue, that authenticity means sharing everything. Just be yourself, they say. Share your truth. Communicate openly. Vulnerable leadership. Machiavelli would recognize this for what it is, strategic suicide dressed up as authenticity. The promise given was a necessity of the past, he wrote. The word broken is a necessity of the present. Translation: binding yourself to past declarations, which is what transparency demands, often undermines present interests. You're voluntarily constraining your future options in service of appearing authentic right now. Let me show you how this plays out. The startup founder trap. Jake runs a startup. His investors keep pushing him. We need transparency. We need to understand your thinking. Keep us updated on everything. So Jake does weekly emails detailing every challenge, every pivot consideration, every concern. He's being transparent, authentic, open. 6 months later, the company's struggling. Jake wants to try a major strategic shift. but he's boxed himself in. Every previous email is now evidence. Every pivot looks like inconsistency. Every new direction requires explaining why the old direction, which he defended transparently just weeks ago, was wrong. His transparency has become a cage. Compare that to Lisa, same situation. Investor pressure for transparency. But Lisa understands Machiavelli's lesson. She provides enough information to maintain trust without committing to every strategic detail. We're testing multiple approaches to user acquisition, true but vague. We're monitoring several key metrics to inform our prioritization, true but flexible. We're staying close to customer feedback while managing burn rate carefully, true but doesn't lock her into specific tactical commitments. When Lisa pivots, nobody's surprised. She never claims certainty about the old approach. She maintains strategic ambiguity while appearing communicative. That's the difference between transparency as weakness and communication as strategy. The social media confession. You see this constantly. People posting their struggles, their doubts, their fears. Just being real, they announce before laying out every insecurity and challenge they're facing. They think this is strength. Vulnerability as courage, transparency as authenticity. What they're actually doing is creating a permanent record of weakness that others will reference every time they need to undermine you. Every confession is ammunition. Every moment of realness is a future liability. Not saying hide everything. I'm saying the Machiavellian approach is selective disclosure. Share what serves you, withhold what doesn't, create the image of openness without the vulnerability of actual transparency. The person who shares strategically appears authentic while maintaining power. The person who shares everything appears authentic while surrendering power. Your choice, which one you want to be. A discipline making silence your default. So how do you actually implement this? Because understanding the principle intellectually is different from applying it instinctively. Here's the framework. 1. Reverse the burden of speaking. Most people operate on the assumption that silence needs to be filled and that they should fill it. Reverse that. Make your default position silence unless speech serves a specific strategic purpose. Before speaking in any consequential situation, ask yourself 3 questions. Does speaking advance my objective better than silence? What information am I revealing that could be used against me? What could I learn by staying silent instead? If you can't answer question 1 with a definitive yes, shut up. 2. Practice comfort with discomfort. The reason most people can't maintain strategic silence is that silence feels uncomfortable. Your brain interprets it as social threat. You feel compelled to fill it. Train yourself to embrace that discomfort. Sit through uncomfortable silences in conversations. Let pauses extend past the point where you want to jump in. Notice the urge to speak without acting on it. The person who can tolerate discomfort longer than others holds a massive advantage, because while you're calm in the silence, others are squirming, and squirming people reveal things they shouldn't. 3. Create information asymmetry. In any interaction where power matters, negotiations, competitions, conflicts, make it your mission to know more about the other party than they know about you. Ask questions that make them reveal their thinking. What's most important to you in this deal? What concerns do you have about this approach? What would success look like from your perspective? Then share minimally. Answer questions with questions. Respond to requests for information with, I'm still gathering data on that, or we're exploring several options, or that depends on several factors, we're still evaluating. You're not lying, you're maintaining the asymmetry that gives you the advantage. 4. Let your results speak. This is the ultimate Machiavellian move. Build a track record so strong that you don't need to explain yourself. Let others interpret your actions through the lens of your success. When you've consistently delivered results, silence doesn't read as uncertainty. It reads as confidence. When you've proven your competence, minimal communication doesn't seem evasive, it seems decisive. The executive with a strong track record can say, trust me on this, and get support. The one without has to explain everything and still struggles to convince people. Build a track record, then leverage the silence it enables. The final play when everyone else is talking. Here's what it all comes down to. We live in a world of noise, endless content, constant updates, everyone broadcasting their thoughts, their opinions, their hot takes, their vulnerabilities, their strategies, which means the person who knows when to shut up stands out by contrast. Their words carry weight because they're rare. Their opinions matter because they're selective. Their commitments feel meaningful because they're not constantly revising them in public. Machiavelli understood something that hasn't changed in 5 centuries. The person who controls information controls outcomes. And you can't control information, you're constantly broadcasting. Men judge generally more by the eye than by the hand, he wrote, because it belongs to everybody to see, to few to feel. Translation: people are watching your performance. Only a few will ever actually know the reality beneath it. So control the performance. And the most powerful performance? The one that reveals just enough to intrigue while withholding enough to maintain mystery. The executive who explains every decision? Common. The one who acts decisively and lets results speak? Powerful. The friend who shares every drama? Entertaining maybe, but ultimately forgettable. The one who keeps their struggles private and shows up strong? Magnetic. The colleague who has an opinion on everything? Background noise. The one who speaks rarely but insightfully. People actually listen. This isn't about being cold. It's not about being distant or aloof for its own sake. It's about understanding that in every interaction, you're making a choice. Am I revealing information that serves me, or am I just filling silence because it's uncomfortable? Most people choose comfort over strategy. They fill the silence, they explain themselves, they share freely, they confuse communication with connection and transparency with trust. You know better now. You understand that silence is a weapon. That mystery is power. That the person who talks less and observes more ends up knowing more, revealing less, and ultimately controlling more. In a world where everyone's racing to be heard, the true power move is knowing when to shut up and let them expose themselves while you're taking notes. So here's your challenge for the next week. Practice strategic silence. Before speaking in any situation that matters, pause. Ask yourself if speech serves your objective better than silence. Notice how others rush to fill the void. Watch what they reveal when you're not matching their energy with verbal diarrhea. You'll be amazed what you learn, amazed at how much power you've been giving away through unnecessary speech, amazed at how much more effective you become when you master this one simple principle. Shut up, observe, learn, then and only then speak. But the people who win aren't always the loudest. They're often the quietest, because while everyone else is performing, they're planning. While everyone else is explaining, they're executing. While everyone else is broadcasting their every move, they're making the moves that actually matter. Machiavelli knew this 500 years ago. Most people still haven't figured it out. Now you have. What you do with that knowledge, that's entirely up to you. Just maybe keep it to yourself.